All right. Hello, everybody. Happy snow day. I want to do a short video just to kind of give you some context and where we're headed next and some things that we would have done if we had met in person today. So, first thing is a reminder of due dates. And I did get an email this morning from the UW reminding us that applications are coming up due February 13th, 2025. So that's kind of most of this video will be based around that idea of applications coming up, right? So you're going to need your abstract, your application, you're going to need an entry code from me, and you're going to need your mentor's approval and contact info. Revisions to your abstract. So make sure that you're following suggestions by the UW. We talked about that a lot in class. Once you submit, they may, like I said before, send your abstract back for some revisions. Usually you have about 3 or 4 days to review, revise, and resubmit. That will require pretty quick turnaround. So just, again, be aware of that. You're going to need mentor approval for that as well. So just, I think I mentioned this before, but when you submit your application, your mentor will automatically get an email to approve your application. It's a pretty quick process on the mentor's end. The symposium is May 16th, 2025. So that is most of the way through spring quarter. You're going to be designing, printing, and presenting your poster. Or if you want to do a speech, you could do that too. You don't need to worry about the poster or the speech at this point. That is the focus of spring quarter. So when I started teaching this and redesigned things, rather than having the literature review due at the end of spring quarter, I decided to bump it up to the end of winter quarter. That gives you the foundation that you can then use for your poster, and then you're only focusing on one major task at a time, right? If you're doing that poster presentation, again, you have a slot of 2 hours and a location. You'll learn that the day of the symposium. So the way that it's worked in previous years, I think you have to show up at 8:30 or something like that. Check in, you get a little badge, you give them your poster, and then your time might start at 10 o'clock or noon or whatnot, right? And we can talk more logistics. Okay. So again, this is a checklist that's up in this week's module. We've looked at this before, but before you can apply, you need a solid abstract, right? You need to have it grammar checked, spell checked, all that stuff. I think everybody's in pretty good shape. It should just be some fine tuning at this point, and I'll talk more about abstract revisions here in a bit. Make sure that you're incorporating feedback from me, from your mentor or mentors, from your peers, right? Again, you don't have to incorporate everything. Incorporate what you think is relevant. With my comments, as I said last Wednesday, I tried to be really nitpicky based on what I think the UW might send revisions back for. Again, things like jargon and text citations we want to avoid. You are going to need, so this is number 3, your mentor's approval. It can be informal. I don't need any confirmation of this. I trust you, right? And, if all else fails, your mentor's going to have to approve it when you apply. You have a clear title that encapsulates your work. Again, take into account feedback that you've gotten from me, from your mentor, from your classmates. Do you have your mentor's title, institution, contact? You're going to need all of that for the application. Just better to have it already kind of preloaded, ready to go. And then do you have your entry code? So once I feel like, yep, you're ready, I know you have a mentor, your abstract is polished, you've got a good title, I will send you an entry code via email. Now, I will say, make sure you're checking or let me know if you're not sure. Did you send me an entry code? Last year, I sent entry codes out, and some students didn't see the entry code until it was almost too late. So just make sure you're checking that I have 15 entry codes, so it's one for each group, right? And then you got to know where to find that application. Again, you can start the application early and then kind of come back to it, but I would not wait until the very last moment. Okay, so mentors. You will need a mentor ASAP if you don't already have one. It looked like about 6 projects do not have mentors. Without a mentor, I cannot provide you with an entry code. I can't be a mentor for all 6 projects. I think the max I could do is 2, just bandwidth wise. So I really don't want to be in a position where I have to choose, but if I do, I'm going to have to base that on who I feel like I would be a best match for with my particular skill set and background, right? So we don't have any humanities projects, so it would be kind of the next step of maybe what I understand about your project and how I feel like I can contribute, because for me, the mentorship is not just putting my name on something, it's making sure that I can be helpful, actually be a mentor for you. So according to the UW, so a lot of this I pulled straight from the UW, just for your edification. If you've already seen this, great, and it's just a reminder. So according to the UW, you'll need to enter the names and email addresses of your research mentor or mentors. The application requires that you submit information for your primary mentor. You're welcome to include any information for additional mentors as well. But you're going to have all that stuff for your mentor. Usually it's name, institution, their position at the school, and their field what they teach, right? So psychology, philosophy, economics, what have you. So a primary mentor, this is again also from the UW, a primary mentor is required to be the most senior research advisor of your project, a professor or principal investigator. Your mentor might have one of the following titles: assistant professor, associate professor, professor, research professor, teaching professor, professor of clinical practice. All of you that have mentors that submitted mentor contracts are good as far as I know. Mentors that have one of the following titles, so this is at the bottom, cannot be your mentor, right? So a lecturer, an instructor, a postdoc, a grad student, a fellow, a PhD student, right? So again, just be aware that they do need to have one of those titles. Your mentor plays an important role in getting your application improved. Again, can't reiterate this enough. After you submit your application, your mentor gets an email and a deadline to review your application. I'll say that as a mentor in the past, it's usually a really quick process because I've already seen the abstract. I've already read it. I usually reread it just to make sure nothing's changed. And then they approve that application title and statement. Now, a mentor can request revision, which is why I would prefer that you have it pre-approved by them. But rejections are rare. So abstract. So if you have your college abstract, you can turn in your final abstract early. The deadline is this Friday, so that's the due date. But if you have it ready and you're like, I could turn it in today, you're welcome to do that early. What I would like for your final abstract is that you submit it exactly as you would submit it to the UW. That means your title, your name, your major, your instructor, your instructor's position, your instructor's field, and it has to be the word count, right? So if it's the final, so what I'm looking for is this is just the one last check. Probably not going to get any comments on it unless there's really something I feel like you need to fix, because this should be, yep, you're good. Here's your entry code. Your abstract needs to be approved by me and your mentor. Again, that can be informal. Once it's approved, I'll send you an entry code. I would say that those of you working in groups probably want to designate one person to complete the application, or you all get together and do it together. But I don't think that 4 people can access it at the same time. So you're going to want to choose a person. Okay, abstract. So according to the UW, and again, we already know this, I'm just reiterating, maximum word count is 300 words. An abstract is a concise summary of your research that highlights major points from your project. Work with your mentor to review the abstract and title before submitting. We strongly recommend you review the abstract writing workshop, which we did last Wednesday. You can also look at examples, which we've also done, so you should be ready to go. Now, in terms of changes, again, all of this is from the UW website. It was part of a frequently asked questions that had to do with what happens if things change in our research. And they say, you are welcome to note those changes as you develop your final presentation. This might include slightly amending your abstract included in your final presentation. However, the abstract submitted with your application, which will be published in the symposium, cannot be amended after the revision window closes. So, as I've said, there are no abstract police. Nobody's going to say, well, your abstract focused on this or mentioned this little detail and you're not addressing that here. Again, the symposium understands that you're all undergraduates, that you're all new to this, and that research is in flux, right? That's a big part of the process. Now, one other thing that you're going to have to think about for the symposium is presentation types. You will have to choose a type of presentation. It's part of the application. The presentation type is up to you, but as far as I know, you cannot change it later. And I think that this makes intuitive sense. They've got 5,000 projects or something like that. They can't be going through and switching things because they've got to start the logistics of who goes in what group, right? So whether that's a time frame for poster presentations or if it's a speech, which speech section are they going in? And again, part of that is, remember, logistically, a poster presentation time frame. So say the first one is from 10 to noon. That might all be medical related things, or it might be all psychology related things. So they're trying to put things together so that there's a little bit more coherence. Now, the UW, their sort of explanation, and then I'll talk briefly about maybe pros and cons, which I believe we've talked about as well. So one type is a poster presentation. That's by far been the most common approach for our students. Up until about 2 years ago, there was no option for partner institutions to do an oral presentation. That did change, and I've had a few students do oral presentations. But poster presentations, students will design and print a 40 by 32 inch poster detailing their project or research. On the day of the symposium, they will be grouped into sessions with other similar presentations and are expected to stand with their poster to talk to audience members and answer questions. I mentioned this at the outset, but we will spend the first 5-6 weeks of spring quarter working on your poster. So you don't have to get ahead of this. You don't have to start working on your poster. It's probably easier if I kind of just walk you through it like we have done with the abstracts. That way you can just focus on one thing at a time, right? So as soon as you've applied to the UW, you switch gears from your abstract to your literature review. And then next quarter, we can talk about the poster presentation, what that looks like. Again, just a reminder that it is about $40 or $50 to print those, and I don't think I'm going to have a budget to print them for you this year. So why a poster presentation? Well, poster presentation, again, you're going to stand there, you're going to talk to different people, you're going to be able to engage with people, further your knowledge of things, demonstrate your knowledge of things, engage a little bit more. And I do think that there's a lot of use for that, right? Whether or not in the grander scheme of things, your presentation was a poster presentation or oral presentation, both of those are going to look good on your CV or your resume or any application. So I don't think there's an advantage one way or the other in terms of how it looks in the long term. But in terms of developing your knowledge and really sort of challenging yourself, I think a poster presentation is kind of the better way to go. For those of us that are more introverted, a poster presentation, oddly, is probably a little bit easier because you're just talking to people one-on-one. You know, you might be talking to classmates, you might be talking to your mentor, right? Whoever kind of stops by. Okay, the other option is an oral presentation. So the oral presentation is a 10-minute presentation and participation in a 2-minute Q&A section. The oral presentation may be accompanied by a visual slideshow handout for the audience, live demonstration performance, and or audience participation. On the day of the symposium, students will be placed in a themed session with 4 to 6 other presenters and a faculty moderator. Now, again, up to you. It's on experience. If you feel like you really want to distill things down into that 10 minutes and then the 2-minute Q&A, It's up to you as well. If you want practice with that, if you're just more comfortable with that. Uh, I think advantages are you're spending less time, right? So you only have to be kind of on the spot for 10 minutes and you have more control over kind of what you say. And you could probably anticipate the 2 or 3 questions that might get asked in those 2 minutes. You're also going to be sort of in a group of 4 or 5 other presenters who have similar topics, which might also be enlightening and a good learning experience. So entirely up to you. I will say of the students that I've worked with for the past 3 symposia, uh, uh, all of the students who did a poster presentation said they would probably do it again. Those that did speeches, I think only 1 or 2 of the 5 or 6 said they would do it again. So again, food for thought. Now, for your application, this is reiterating, right? You're going to need your mentor's name, affiliation, position. You're going to need their email, your names, your affiliation, and you're going to need to choose a correct major. I assume that there is some mechanism for this because there are plenty of group projects at the UW. So just follow, what the options are. But if you have a project that's maybe in a gray area between majors, what I would recommend is that you go to the abstracts from last year, and in the search for abstract, there's a little drop down menu. You can go through and look at what the majors are. They're alphabetical order. So adding co-presenters is another logistics thing, also from the UW. For group presentations, the primary presenter should submit co-presenters' information during the application process. Co-presenters will receive an email to verify they're part of the group. Note that only the primary presenter may edit or submit the application. I don't think that it's necessary to sort of fight over who's the primary presenter in the long term. I don't think it really matters for this. The main thing is that you did the research, that you were part of a team. You might designate a primary presenter as just the person that's going to turn in the application. Okay, so had we been meeting in person, and I was going to do this as a live synchronous session, however, I didn't get this out in time. So what I wanted to do is a breakout room. So what I would encourage you to do is read literature review example 1, which is in this week's reading. Read it, skim it, think about what's working well, and maybe write some notes for yourself. And we can talk about this in class when we meet again. Again, you're sensitizing yourself to what makes a literature review. Then we would do the same thing with literature review number 2. Now, full disclosure, one of the examples is a student that I worked with as a mentor, and I think it might be on her literature review. It might list me. Anyway, think about the 2. I think both of them have rooms for improvement. These are from students who didn't benefit from as much background in what a literature review is. So again, as I adjust things and change things year to year, this is only the 4th time I've taught this, which for me is like nothing. I mean, I've taught English 101 like 50 times. So I've had time to refine it and change it. But when it comes to this, every year I'm changing things, trying to set you all up for success. And what I realized last year is we need more grounding in what makes a literature review good. So, again, kind of take those literature review examples as a starting point, as things that people did. They're not flawed. They're not terrible. They're pretty good. But a better understanding of what makes a literature review would have strengthened them. All right. So there you go. If you have questions, comments, concerns, jokes, memes, or recipes, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to you all next week.